Hello, Theodore Shoebat here, giving you guys another message that you will not hear at church. I guarantee that yet another Marine has been killed in the state of Tennessee. This time it was an officer who was a Marine veteran, but like the saying goes, once a Marine, always a Marine. And he was a police officer on duty, and he was murdered. And according to the report here, it says, tonight the details are still sketchy, but a suspect has been named in connection with the shooting death of Memphis, Tennessee police officer Sean Bolton. Bolton, 33, was a Marine and veteran of the war in Iraq. NBC reports that the suspected gunman has been identified, but he is still on the loose. Witnesses said there were two black men in a vehicle, one of whom opened fire on Officer Bolton during a routine traffic stop. The driver of the car eventually turned himself into authorities. He told police that Tremaine Wilborn, 29, was the shooter. The unidentified passenger was released without charge, pending further investigation into the shooting. Then it says here, when Officer Bolton went down, a private citizen was able to use the police officer's own two-way radio to call in the shooting. The 9/11 tape of the call is painful to hear, as the distraught civilian tells dispatch the officer had been shot multiple times. The officer was transported to a local hospital where he succumbed to his massive injuries. Wilborn was already out of jail on supervised release for a bank robbery. He is armed and dangerous, and after killing a member of law enforcement, has little to lose. Authorities say he should not be approached, etc. Then it says here in the end, the bulletproof vest Officer Bolton was wearing wasn't enough to save his life. It's a very sad story. It's a very distressing story to see good men like this be victims, not only to criminals, but, and here's the thing, it wasn't just the criminals that killed this man. It was the liberal, far-left, lenient laws of the society, laws that the society has collectively accepted, and laws that have been imposed by far-left progressive elitists. Laws that allow a bank robber to roam free in society in the name of mercy, in the name of love. The man robbed a bank. He was a known criminal. He was a known drug dealer. He was a deviant enemy of humanity, enemy of liberty, enemy of life, enemy of truth. And yet he was roaming around the streets, roaming around society free. And this is what happens when you have these sort of laws. It's not the evil politicians that impose the laws that are killed by the criminals that they protect. Oh, no, no, no. The devil needs those people. It's the good men like Officer Bolton, good people like Officer Bolton, who end up being killed, who end up being martyred by the criminals that the state is protecting. They are not only martyred by the criminals, but they are martyred by the state that protects the criminals. More so by the state that protects the criminals. He is a martyr of righteousness. Because when you are an officer, you are an executioner of the wrath of God. And Satan hates the wrath of God. And he will do anything to prevent and to impede the wrath of God from being executed on those who deserve it. And so he goes after officers. Satan loves rebellion. He loves revolution. He hates law. He hates order. Jesus Christ said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Truth has order. Life, true life, has order. The way to salvation, the way to liberation in God has order. Christ is order. He has order. He is order. He contains all order. And so anything that is an enemy of order is of Satan. This man that murdered this officer is of Satan. These laws that protect criminals are of Satan. The officer is following the ordinances of God. He's protecting and enforcing the ordinances of God. This is why in Romans chapter 13, Paul says, those who go against the ordinances of the state go against the ordinance of God. So the officer, in a way, is like a representative of God. Satan hates all representatives of God. And so Satan, the principalities of darkness, they really invade the state. They take over the state. They use the state for evil. And there are really only two choices in the spiritual realm, in this war between good and evil. Of course, there's good and there's evil. But each one consists of their own particular form of state. In the righteous state, the state is unified with God. When Adam was on earth, after being created, he was the king. God says, you are the steward of the world. You are the steward of the earth. You are to name the animals. You are to rule the animals. This is your own garden. So in a way, Adam was God's representative. And he answered to God. As St. Paul says, the head of man is Christ. So the head of Adam was God. And he was the ruler, just as the king is the ruler, and the king is under God. That's why in the scriptures, I believe in the Proverbs, it says that God says, by me do kings reign, by me is justice decreed. So the king is ruling, but nonetheless, everything good that proceeds from the king comes from God. So when the king executes justice, God is executing justice through him, through the instrumentality of the king, through the instrumentality of the state. And so as St. John of Damascus tells us, when Adam was in the Garden of Eden, before the fall, he was not only in this beautiful paradise, this physical realm that was very beautiful, very pleasant, very blissful, but at the same time, he was in perpetual union with God. He was in perpetual meditation, perpetual contemplation in God. And in that contemplation came bliss. In that contemplation came happiness. In that contemplation came absolution. Came the absolute. God is the absolute. Without him, none of us would exist. He is the absolute. He is the uncaused cause. And so Adam was in the uncaused cause. He was in contemplation on the uncaused cause, in the first principle, and that is God. And so in that beautiful union, he was in God, and therefore he was in truth. He was in life. He was in the way. He was in salvation. He was in order itself. And so the state was in order. That's why they were in a state of sinlessness. Not that they did not have the ability to sin, of course they did, because they eventually sinned, but they were in a state of sinlessness. And being in that state of sinlessness, they were in a state of perpetual contemplation. Satan came in and said, you can be gods if you eat this fruit. Excuse me. And so, as G.K. Chesterton tells us, the root thought or the root disposition that led to the fall of man was a discontentment in the current state that they were in. The current state that they were in was perpetual contemplation, union with God. That was the state that they were in. But Eve was discontent. She was not content in this situation. She was not satisfied. She wanted more. She thought she was getting more. And as women today, many of them want to be like goddesses. Eve wanted that state. She was, I guess, the first feminist, you could say. And so in that discontentment, she rebelled because she wanted to be divine. She didn't want to be one with God. She wanted to be God. She wanted to be divine. So she rebelled, and from that rebellion came chaos. From that chaos came the severing between the state and God. And there was sin. And so one of the goals of Christianity, that is, or the goal of Christianity, is to conform the world to Christ. And in conforming the world to Christ, the state or governments are conformed to Christ. This is why God, in the book of Acts, says of St. Paul, I have chosen St. Paul to be a witness to the Gentiles, to be a witness to kings and to governors. So he wants states to be conformed to Christ. He wants states to be one with Christ. And so Satan does not want the state to be one with Christ. This is why Satan tries very hard to use governments to impose his own unjust decrees. It's why in the scripture God says, by me do kings decree justice. It doesn't say by me do kings decree tyranny or despotism, but by me do kings decree justice. So Satan wants to use the state to decree evil, and this is what has led to the murder of this officer. Satan has taken over the state. The state no longer, or governments in the Western world, no longer want to have a mystical union with God. They want to have a deviant bondage to Satan and to be really the acolyte and advancer of Antichrist. This is what led to the murder of this officer. Was the officer murdered by a Muslim? Who knows? Could have been. But there's several things I want to say about that. If he was a Muslim, then of course this only further evidences the jihad and the evils of Islam. But at the same time, what saddens me is how this story is getting very little attention. When the 4 Marines were murdered in Chattanooga, it got lots of attention because it was done by a Muslim. But because we don't know if this person is a Muslim yet, we're not giving it any attention. Is the life of a Marine or is the life of an officer more valuable when he is killed by a Muslim than if he is killed by a non-Muslim American? This is the problem that I have. The murder of an officer done by a Muslim is the same result as with the murder of an officer done by a non-Muslim. It is the result of chaos. It is the result of rebellion. It is the result of Antichrist. It is the result of the hatred against God. This is why I'm against the idea of promoting Islam as an enemy of all ideas. Like, it's an enemy of all ideas, therefore we should get rid of it. Well, enemy of all ideas. Well, you're acting as though Islam is the only idea that's evil, or that's an enemy of liberty, an enemy of truth and civilization. All anti-Christian beliefs are tyrannical, be it Islam, be it Mormonism, be it Hinduism, and all these things. While it is true that Muslims are causing a substantial amount of problems in the world, at the same time, there is a tremendous amount of violence going on in the United States that is not done by Muslims, and we seem not to really pay the attention that it deserves. So I think we should focus on all evil. Islamic evil? Absolutely. I write about Islamic evil every day. So don't tell me that I'm some crazy liberal for saying this. I just simply believe that we should be focusing on all evil, and I want to affirm that the spiritual state of a society, to me, is more important than any outside enemy. It is more deserving of our attention and fixation than any outside enemy. This is why God, in the Old Testament, in the books of the prophets, in the Pentateuch, he cares more about the spiritual state of Israel than he does about the people around Israel. This is why, for example, in the law of Moses, in the book of Deuteronomy, I believe, it says that if a prophet comes to you and says, let us worship other gods, you are to kill him. Why? Because he would corrupt the spiritual state of the society. If, for example, a foreigner comes to Israel, he is to pledge allegiance to the God of Israel, and he may live in Israel peacefully. If a stranger in Israel passes his child through the fires of Molech, he is to be stoned to death. If an Israelite does the same thing, he is to be stoned to death equally. Why? It's not about Israelites, it's not about non-Israelites, it's about the spiritual state of a society. Same thing goes for this. If an officer is murdered, be it by a Muslim or a non-Muslim, our fixation should be the same. Our focus should be the same, and our awareness of the problem should be the same. And that awareness should be on the problem of spiritual decay in the society and lawlessness. The anti-police sentiments that are inculcating themselves throughout society should very much concern us, because officers are picked on every single day. The crime rate in Baltimore has increased tremendously because officers are tired of being mistreated. They're tired of going to a black man who hates the police and telling him to please step out of the car and being treated like scum, even though he's simply following the rules that he was trained to do. The officer is tired of going to these white far leftists. I'm not just picking on blacks. It's throughout all colors, but primarily this is being done by white far leftists and black supremacists. Let's get real here. And they're tired of being mistreated by them. I saw a video of some crazy white guy attacking an officer. Just attacking him as he was arresting the criminal. this man attacked them. And a Chinese officer, a man who was racially Chinese, American officer, kicked the criminal in the face and took him down. And it seems as though every time an officer does something, be it wrong or be it something that is good, but the good of it is omitted from the videos that they're presenting, the media is giving it an unbelievable amount of abusive fixation, meaning attention that is given to the officer, but in a negative light, in order to provoke people to anger against the police. Yet we have here two black men involved in the murder of an officer. And who's talking about it? Who's talking about the abuse of the police? Nobody. Very few people are. So we should be talking about the abuse of the police, because the police officer is a representative of God. He is the executioner of the ordinances and vengeance of God. Satan hates that. We should be going against everything that Satan is for. And Satan is for chaos. He is for disorder. We should be for everything that Satan is against. Order, truth, life, justice, mercy. Bottom line. This is Theodore Shoebat. Hope you guys have enjoyed this message. Hope you guys have learned something from this message. You just heard some theology. God bless and God be with us.